Hello, today we delve into the literary world of Roy Clarke, the legendary writer behind iconic sitcoms like Last of the Summer Wine and Keeping Up Appearances. While well known for his television series, Roy also wrote scripts for radio shows and film screenplays. He was also responsible for writing a collection of books that capture the same wit and social observation that made his television shows so well loved. From Hyacinth's hilarious etiquette guide to the chronicles of the eccentric characters in Last of the Summer Wine. In this video, we look at their themes, humour and unique perspective on British life. Roy had never intended to write sitcoms. He was only ever interested in writing novels, but each time he started to write something, he wasn't happy with it, so started again. Then he was given the opportunity to write scripts for BBC radio dramas, which opened the door to writing for television. Roy had barely finished writing the scripts for the first series of Last of the Summer Wine when he wrote his first Last of the Summer Wine book. Perhaps he did not anticipate writing many series of Last of Summer Wine. After all, his first sitcom for ATV, The Misfit, only ran for 2 series in 1970 and 1971, so a book was a good way to capitalise on the success of the characters. Unsurprisingly, Roy's first Last of the Summer Wine book was titled Last of the Summer Wine, as at the time it was the book version of the Last of the Summer Wine sitcom, so the simple title made sense. It was originally published in 1974 and featured Compo, Clegg and Blamire. My copy is the 1983 second reprint, where Foggy replaces Blamire to match the trio in the TV series at the time it was published. While little is known about his wife, Roy dedicated this book to her, to Enid, who makes it all possible. Inevitably, this book is very similar in approach to the early series of sitcom. It's more of a drama with humour based on observations of human nature, while the old friends get into situations even when they know they should know better. A few new characters are included, most of whom we will never meet again. One of these new characters is Sam, who inconveniently dies in the wrong place at the wrong time. If you recognise the scenario, that is because this book would later be adapted as the first Last of the Summer Wine film, Getting Sam Home. Sam has been sent home from hospital, and what turns out to be his last wish is to see his lady friend Lily, bless her, despite being married to Sybil. Sybil seems to know Sam has a mistress, but prefers to keep her suspicions to herself. This love triangle is not unlike that of Howard, Pearl and Marina, who will appear in the 1980s theatre summer season plays and the 1985 television series. The trio agreed to help Sam visit Lily. Getting Sam out of his home is one thing, but when he dies with a smile on his face, getting Sam home is another matter. After discreetly returning the now deceased Sam to his own bed by the moonlight, the trio think their problems are over. Apparently no one doubted Sam that died overnight at home, so Sybil would go ahead with the funeral arrangements. When Sam's coffin is consigned to the shed, because his wife won't have him cluttering up the house, Lily persuades the trio to take Sam back to her home to rest there. There then follows a farce including Foggy dressing up as the corpse and starting a late night dog walker whose dog had got loose. Then the trio have to use their guile and threats to disclose a certain person's infidelity to acquire a tailor's dummy to substitute for the absent Sam. Later attempts to get Sam home in time for his funeral are problematic. The trio get Sid involved for transport, but predictably the vehicle turns out to be unreliable. They face attending a funeral where the coffee contains a tailor's dummy. The chaos is only resolved by nocturnal assistance from an unexpected quarter. At this point, Roy would be unaware that Michael Bates would soon have to leave the television series due to ill health. So when Last of the Summer Wine director Alan Bell adapted the book as a television film, Roy rewrote the Blamire character for Foggy Dewhurst. This led to the new version of the book being published in 1983 with Blamire replaced by Foggy as in the film. In 1976, the BBC published the pilot and Series 1 scripts in a book with the inventive title of Last of the Summer Wine Scripts. Whilst not a novel at the time, it would have been just as interesting to a summer wine fan. This was in the days before audiobooks, home video and DVDs, so having the scripts was almost the only way to enjoy the series again, or until they were repeated on television. The scripts seem to be included in a random order. While the episode numbers did not reflect the order they were written in, the book does not reproduce them in the order they were broadcast, nor in the order of the BBC's programme numbers. The scripts are reproduced with the original location descriptions and character directions. Some of these have changed in the filming process. Directors are not obliged to precisely portray the directions, especially as the location might not fit what the writer imagined. The script for the opening of the pilot describes a girl walking along a pre-war housing estate with a transistor radio playing. This concept was developed upon and became the basis for the opening title sequence. In most episodes there are changes to the original script and sometimes entire scenes have been added. The opening to Short Back and Palais Glide starts in the barbershop, whereas the broadcast shows the trio in the town. These changes might have been necessary if the running time was too short. While some changes of script would have been made for various reasons while it's filming, it's noticeable that composed lines are often paraphrases of the script. Bill Owen was known for not learning his exact lines, which was an annoyance to Brian Wilde in particular. Interestingly, the script for the pilot seems to have been retrospectively edited. In the scene where Compo is first talking to Mrs. Batty, he calls her Nora and refers to her husband as Wally. However, in the broadcast of the pilot, Mrs. Batty is called Eunice and her unseen husband is referred to as Harold. They were only changed to Nora and Wally in the first series. A Last of the Summer Wine cartoon strip appeared in the Daily Star for several years, beginning in early 1982. It was illustrated by Roger Mahoney, who was also known for his comic strips The Gambles and Andy Capp. Roy Clarke wrote the stories which typified the witty interplay between the trio and some of the other well-known characters. Nora and Wally were there, and so were Sid and Ivy at the cafe. As they had to be quick jokes, they often revolved around Compo pestering Nora or Foggy's failed attempts at anything he boasted he could do. All the stories are original and some refer to people and events we know about, like a certain bus conductress that Sid once knew. The illustrations are the typical pen drawings you would expect in a newspaper cartoon strip, but easily recognisable as our well-loved characters and their surroundings. Their popularity resulted in a compendium of the strips being published in 1983. The book, again titled Last of the Summer Wine, was optimistically subtitled Book 1. There wasn't a Book 2. It features over 242 of the 1,000 strips, mostly in the order they were published in the newspaper. It also includes a few black and white photos of the cast from the series. This became the third Last of the Summer Wine book, which has subsequently caused confusion for people looking for the original novel with Blaymire, the second version of the novel with Foggy, or the Book of Scripts. Online shops do not often differentiate between the different books, even if customers or the shops specify the novel, script or cartoon strips, you might still not receive the volume you expected. In 1986, Roy's novel Gala Week, a Summer Wine Chronicle, was published featuring Compo, Clegg and Seymour. Firstly, a bit of a diversion. My copy is the 1987 Penguin Books paperback edition, and I found the blurb on the back of the book a bit odd. It says, "Here come Nora Batty, Arnold, Clegg and Compo, not to mention Seymour." It would be expected that for an established work, the publisher would include snippets about well-known characters, so I thought that they'd mistyped the name used for Wally's character in the pilot, where he was called Harold, as Arnold. But there is a character called Arnold in the book, although not someone we'd ever heard of before, and certainly not a pivotal character. Gala Week is set in the first season that we meet Seymour, so it may have been a slip of the pen that early in the book Roy refers to Seymour plucking a thorn from the sleeve of his safari jacket and resettled a school scarf about his throat. Seymour wore a tweed jacket and never had a scarf. Foggy did wear a safari jacket and a scarf that he claimed was his regimental colours. However, this distinction is irrelevant to the story and no harm is done by this minor transposition. As well as the gala happening this week, there is a most important entry on Compo's calendar: Nora Batty's birthday. He is determined to impress her with a gift, but he does not know what until the trio visit the grounds of Cosgrove Hall, where the gala is to be held. The grounds are home to a peacock. Then it comes to him. A peacock, not to keep, just borrowed to greet her on the morning of her special day. Incredibly, no one seems to think this is a bad idea, and Seymour seizes the opportunity to take charge while also agreeing to help Howard in his latest scheme with meeting Marina, with the condition that Howard assists in acquiring the peacock. Inevitably, Seymour involves Wesley in his scheme. Later we will meet Edie and the newlyweds, Barry and Glenda. Even if you've never seen Last of the Summer Wine, almost everything is here in print. The expression in Compo's words, the internal monologue of the characters, especially Clegg. Seymour's determination that his plan will work no matter how many iterations fail, plus intimate details of the locations. Very little imagination is needed to complete the picture. However, if you have seen the show, you may recognise some elements from the television episodes. The Reverend Charles Bean Peach is organising the gala and considers Seymour just as irritating as the vicar found Foggy in the 1977 episode Jubilee. Bean Peach also has a similarly mousy wife to the Jubilee vicar that he orders about like a skivvy. The trio get a lift on Early Tater's pony cart, much like they did in the 1979 episode The Flagonnet Snags, when Willis gave them a lift with his horse and cart. We also meet some familiar characters, like Fairburn at the co-op, that had a fling with her from behind the bacon counter. Two brothers who are criminals make a cameo appearance. One, called Morris, was described as burly, strong, fit and thick. His mental processes were like shackles round your ankles, according to his brother. I couldn't help reading what Morris said in Crusher's unsophisticated drawl. We are treated to some loving remembrances from two unlikely sources. Wally's in bed while Nora has already got the kettle boiling. Wally sees their wedding photograph on the dressing table. He was in khaki and maybe taller in those days. Nora looked thin but determined under a 40s hat. Meanwhile, Nora is busying herself polishing some brass ornaments. A frog from Auntie Beth, now deceased. She would have been proud that Edward was now teaching. A bumblebee she bought on a trip to Scarborough on the bike and sidecar. It rained. They ate sandwiches in a shelter on Marine Drive. Looking across the sea, it was hard to believe Wally had been over there fighting, and now he was throwing crusts, the seagulls. We saw a lot of Nora and Wally in the television series, but their relationship seemed cheerless. It was nice to see a more positive aspect of the relationship affirmed. Halfway through the book, Compo's peacock surprise fails to please Nora, causing Compo to say he's finished with her. There now come multiple subplots, all of which will eventually reach a climax at the gala. Conveniently, there is an introduction agency in the Chapel Street run by Mr. Norris Wright and wife Esme. It seems matchmaking is a sideline to their school of dancing, but in all other respects they seem to be a prototype for Lance and Ethel, who will appear in the 1997 episode The Lovemobile. Even Seymour thinks they might find a suitable matrimonial partner for him. However, it is the trio that will later rescue a relationship from breaking point, not the Terpsichorean matchmakers. Developing one of Seymour's contraptions requires a visit to the scrapyard operated by Rank Arnold. His bird, 20 years younger and twice as rough, with size 20 biceps bulging through an 18 dress, bears a remarkable resemblance, on paper at least, to Mrs. Avery, who we'll meet in the May 2000 episode From Here to Paternity. Roy has taken the opportunity to include some elements that most likely would not have made it into a television episode, as the printed word relies on the reader making their own images. The sight of Compo's apparently bare backside sticking out of the window of Wesley's car would probably not have been acceptable on television. Ultimately, all ends well at the gala, including the unexpected reunion of Rank Arnold and his wife, and Nora accepts Compo's request for a dance, while she thinks, I suppose sometimes he means well. The book was also published in hardback, large print and as an audiobook, superbly read by Peter Sallis. Roy's next novel was the second and sadly final Summer Wine Chronicles edition. The Moonbather was published in 1987, but its origins go back to 1983. So first, we're going on a trip to the seaside. In the early 1950s, when variety theatre started to decline, it was the seaside summer season shows that helped to keep those variety acts in work. It wasn't a holiday without seeing one of the shows which ran for a 16-week season in the big theatres. The popular stars of the day played to packed houses up to 3 times a day. Some theatres presented variety shows, others, like the Grand in Blackpool, would usually present a comedy play with star names. Later, as television increased in popularity in the 1950s and 1960s, stage versions of the most popular television shows started to appear at coastal theatres for the summer. However, as overseas holidays became more affordable, the British seaside summer season began to decline in the late 1970s and early 1980s as more people took to holidays abroad. So it was that Roy wrote a play for the 1983 summer season at the Devonshire Park Theatre, Eastbourne. It was more of a farce than the television episodes. It was summer season, so audiences would appreciate end-of-the-pier humour. Brian Wilde chose not to take part, so his character was included but remained unseen in bed with a bad back. In The Stage and Television Today, Eric Braun commented that, however remote this may appear from the original flavour of summer wine, it certainly seems to work. The show introduced 3 characters that had previously only appeared in print: Howard, Pearl and Marina. There was also Crusher, a version of Morris, one of the criminal brothers in Gala Week. All 4 would later become part of the television series. In this incarnation, Crusher is not related to Sid and Ivy, but following John Comer's death in February 1984, he naturally fitted into the television series as Sid's nephew, providing help and hindrance in the cafe from the Christmas 1984 special. The success of the 1983 show prompted a repeat in 1984 at the Pier Theatre, Bournemouth. A report in The Stage and Television Today said the show lacks the finesse of the television series. In fairness, that is to be expected with a live theatre performance that does not have the benefit of retakes. Howard, Pearl and Marina transferred to the television series in the March 1985 episode Catching Digby's Donkey. Another revised version of the show toured Britain in 1985. Peter Sallis was reluctant to appear in the new production, so Bill Owen became the only member of the television trio to appear in this version. Although the script bears the title Last of the Summer Wine, for the tour it was retitled Compo Plays Cupid. Compo is the hero of the piece, saving Howard from Pearl's wrath and getting Clegg's relation Bernard off the hook with potential fiancée Marina. Once again, the summer season was a success. While none of these shows were published as books in their own rights, Roy's 1987 novel The Moonbather bears many similarities to the summer season stage plays. Seymour is inspecting Clegg's home in preparation for his visitors, while reminding Clegg not to let you-know-who know about his plans. At the direction of Seymour, Clegg has bought some self-assembly shelving. Conveniently, the co-op have a sale on. It's not so much assembled as bodged together, as soon as anyone goes near it, a shelf becomes dislodged. Seymour's excuse for not entertaining at his own home is that an initial rendezvous at such a remote location would be improper. The target of Seymour's affection is Miss Samantha Pettit, who has been unofficially engaged to Traffic Warden and Special Constable Gifford Beaumont for 14 years. Seymour cannot contain his dislike of Gifford and is not too bothered who knows, including his uniformed rival. Miss Pettit will be accompanied by her mother, Madge, as chaperone. Compo cannot resist trying to find out what Seymour and Clegg are doing and turns up just before Miss and Mrs. Pettit arrive. He protests at being thrown out onto the street, claiming he's already been mistaken for the flasher 3 times on his way there. There then follows a series of events worthy of a Brian Rix farce, like Clegg trying to keep the visiting ladies unaware of the presence of half-undressed Compo, then trying to get rid of the flasher who has walked into Clegg's home through the open front door, while Norman was looking for Compo to reunite him with his trousers. Eventually order is restored and it's up to Clegg to clarify what had really happened. The Moonbather character had believed to be a flasher, but it turns out his nocturnal exploits were quite innocent, although somewhat bizarre. It works well as a book, but you might think it would be difficult to do justice to the story in the theatre. But Roy did not disappoint when the theatrical version was first performed in Scunthorpe 16 years later. Again, just like the Gala Week novel, the blurb on the back of the 1988 Penguins book paperback edition is inaccurate. It says, "So, with Seymour and Clegg semi-clad in one room," neither of them was ever semi-clad. Seymour did resemble and was mistaken for the flasher when wearing a long mac and balaclava, but he never lost his trousers. The book was also published in hardback and large print and as an audiobook read by Peter Sallis. While these two Summer Wine Chronicle books provide a wonderful expansion of the Summer Wine universe, it's a pity that no more instalments were made. However, they still offer a treat for fans of the show, allowing them to revisit their favourite characters and enjoy more adventures. Roy's Summer Wine Country is something of a departure from the usual type of volume you might expect from someone known as a sitcom writer, although Roy Clarke is no ordinary sitcom writer. Published in 1989, the book describes the rugged beauty of the haunts of Compo, Clegg and Co, using entries from Clegg's journal to accompany photographs by Holmfirth photographer Paul Barker. The book is visually stunning, with Paul Barker's photographs showcasing the weathered beauty of the West Yorkshire countryside. For fans of Last of the Summer Wine, the book is a nostalgic trip back to the iconic landscapes and atmosphere of the series. There are pictures of some well-known locations from the show and views of the towns and countryside. Every type of landscape is included, from the expansive moors to the rugged hills surrounding the towns in the valleys. Paul Barker has photographed every season and every time of day, from lambing on the hills via harvest in the fields to snow-covered rooftops and lanes. There are expansive panoramas with misty morning reservoirs and twilight over the towns lit by occasional streetlights. In addition to the verdant landscapes, Paul has also photographed intimate details: a cat on a window ledge, a single ancient tree with rugged bark, a donkey silently contemplating his next meandering move. The book amply demonstrates Roy's love and appreciation of the area. Accompanying the image, Roy has written thoughts and observations from the perspective of Norman Clegg. Unsurprisingly, for something written by Roy, you can hear Clegg's voice in the humorous and insightful commentary on the world around him. Summer Wine Country captures the essence of the television series as readers are transported to the world of Clegg, Compo, Nora and their friends, experiencing the beauty and bleakness of the windswept moors. Summer Wine Country is a delightful book for fans of the television series and anyone who appreciates the charm and splendour of the English countryside. In 1993 and 1994, two books were published by the BBC, co-written by Roy and featuring his social climbing character Hyacinth Bouquet. The first was her book of etiquette, and next was her social calendar, showing a year in her busy schedule. The Book of Etiquette is co-written by Jonathan Rice with illustrations by Chris Lloyd. Hyacinth Bouquet is also credited as an author. Hyacinth responds to questions of etiquette from the socially less fortunate. Her responses and anecdotes often contain snippets of the dialogue taken from the first few years of the series. It includes photographs from the show and even a family tree. Throughout the book, Hyacinth's pretentiousness and unwavering belief in her own superiority are on full display. Let's see what she has to say about responding to an invitation. One must never accept an invitation unless one is absolutely certain one can attend. Of course, it is always preferable to decline with regret, citing a previous engagement even if one does not possess one. Then on the subject of conversation, Hyacinth typically tries to insinuate her own superiority by saying, "It is essential to cultivate an air of sophistication when conversing. Avoid topics such as the weather or one's neighbours. Instead, discuss matters of culture, art, and the finer things in life." Hyacinth's social calendar, co-written by Jonathan Rice, is basically Hyacinth Bouquet's one-year diary that was a gift from Richard. The entries are handwritten, of course, and also included are newspaper clippings and a few photographs. It features a list of important telephone numbers, annotated by Hyacinth with comments such as "Dirty hands must not touch wallpaper" next to the electrician's number. Each month features detailed accounts of Hyacinth's social engagements, from garden parties and charity balls to dinner parties and bridge clubs. Filled with Hyacinth's characteristically pompous and aspirational entries, the calendar provides a humorous look at her attempts to maintain her image as a woman of high society. Expect invitations to grand events, thinly veiled criticisms of her social inferiors, and plenty of self-congratulatory moments. Throughout the calendar, readers are treated to Hyacinth's witty and often condescending commentary on her social circle, family and the world around her. She is especially condescending towards her family, except of course her sister Violet, the one with a Mercedes, swimming pool, sauna and room for a pony. While the diary refers to people and places mentioned in the series, like Marston Hall, Hyacinth's rural retreat, and C.P. Benedict, the garden centre king, it is not a script-based book like the Book of Etiquette. It even includes incidents that have never appeared in the series at all, such as a visit to the Antiques Roadshow. It is a light-hearted and thoroughly entertaining for anyone that is a fan of the series. The book is a perfect companion to the Etiquette Guide, offering a more immersive experience into Hyacinth's world. It's a fun way for fans of the show to spend time with their favourite character and share in her often misguided social ambitions. Admittedly, you really need to be a fan of the show to read or flick through these books. Without the backstory of the sitcom, Hyacinth might come over as a bit of a snob. A new stage adaptation of the Summer Wine stage show debuted in 2003 based on Roy Clarke's novel The Moonbather, with Foggy replacing Seymour from the book version, but still based in 1983. The play featured the trio as they attempted to get to the bottom of the disturbance created by a near-naked man in the town. This time there was a different motive for his nocturnal nudity than in the Moonbather novel of 1987. The world premiere of the play was performed by the Scunthorpe Little Theatre Club in October 2003. Then from the 15th of July to the 8th of August 2009, the play was performed in Eastbourne by Eastbourne Theatres, using new actors to perform the roles of Compo, Clegg and Foggy before touring the country throughout November 2009. The descriptions of Clegg's home in this play edition are basically the same as the 1985 summer season show Compo Plays Cupid, including the flat pack shelf unit. Foggy has invited Constance and her aunt Nora Batty as chaperone for something to eat. In the novel, Seymour had invited Samantha Pettit and her mother as chaperone. They are coming to Clegg's as Foggy only has a bedsit and a landlady that can eavesdrop in stereo. Foggy living in a bedsit is plausible, as the play is set before he went to Bridlington. When Foggy returned, he lived in the family home he'd inherited. Clegg is worried that Foggy is always going to be entertaining women. Foggy says, "It must be 5 years since I entertained a woman." Indeed, his visit to see Gwen in Wales was in December 1977. This script is typical of a half-dressed, mistaken identity hiding and running around farce. There is some typical Clarke wordplay and the jokes land well. It is funnier on paper than the summer season scripts. The Flasher has another, but different, innocent, but still wacky reason for his late night activities. I won't spoil the denouement by telling you what the Moonbather was doing. The script of this version of the Moonbay the Play adaptation was made available for amateur and professional use in 2012. It's since been performed about 50 times. There are novels that use Roy Clarke's characters and rely heavily on the situations of the scripts of his sitcoms, and while Roy is credited for creating the characters, he's not an author of these books. Open All Hours by Christine Sparks is based on Roy's 1976 sitcom starring Ronnie Barker and David Jason. Potter, also by Christine Sparks, is based on Roy's 1979 sitcom starring Arthur Lowe and later Robin Bailey. Whether you're a fan of his classic sitcoms or you simply enjoy the witty social observations, these books offer a delightful extension of Roy Clarke's comedic universe. If you've enjoyed this video, leave a comment about which book piqued your interest the most.